Hey friends, tonight we're rummaging through the world's oldest rap sheet, the most notorious criminals in biblical history and their punishments. Not the polite, stained glass kind of wrongdoing where someone apologizes over hummus. No, we're talking the real dusty, donkey parked in the red zone biblical world, where crimes involve stolen idols, forged sacrifices, palace coups, and one extremely dramatic millstone. It's history's most chaotic HOA meeting, and every complaint ends with, "and then the earth opened." So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're actually a believer in unhinged ancient courtroom drama, delivered at a soothing bedtime pace. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Somehow it's always 2:07 a.m. somewhere, and your blanket is weirdly too short. Now, dim the lights, put on a fan for that soft white noise, and nestle in like a Levite trying not to look guilty. Have you ever wondered what counted as a felony back then? How many goats equal bail? Is throwing someone off a balcony a recognized sentencing guideline? Did anyone have a lawyer? Or did you just bring figs and hope for mercy? Did Judas collect a receipt for those 30 silver coins, or at least a W-2? Could you survive an audit by the prophet Elijah? And seriously, who cleans up after a plague of frogs? Great news. You're about to find out. Congratulations. You've just woken up somewhere between Genesis and Acts, the era where evidence is a cloak, motive is idols, and the judge is wearing a linen ephod. Get comfortable. Court is in session. You're standing in a field that smells like sun-baked soil and sibling rivalry. Cain's offering smoulders in the background, unsatisfying as a cold casserole, and Abel's sacrifice still has that God actually liked it glow. One jealous rage later, the ground swallows blood, and you're hearing the sentence, no prison, just permanent wandering, and a divine mark that says, do not touch. The earliest witness protection plan, minus the new identity. Let's talk about offerings. The air has that split fragrance of warm grain and singed fat. Abel's altar still crackles with the buttery hiss of firstborn portions. Thick, rich smoke that climbs like a prayer. Cain's pile looks tidy, respectable, curated. It smells like roasted effort, not surrendered heart. You can feel the difference in your ribs. One gift lands like thank you. The other lands like there, I did it. God's response is not thunder, it's counsel. If you do well, will you not be lifted? It's a hand on your shoulder, steady and kind, pointing to a door you can still choose. It's time for a walk. The brothers move out to the field, where grass brushes your calves and cicadas grind out a soundtrack of normal. Jealousy rides shotgun. You can hear it breathing. There is no speech recorded here, just the silence that comes right before something breaks. Then it happens. The world goes sharp, then quiet, then wrong forever. The ground is warm, sticky, and not supposed to be. Abel doesn't answer when you call his name. You look away. The sky won't. Now court convenes, and there's only one question on the docket. Where is your brother? It isn't that God doesn't know. It's that you need to say it. Cain replies with the world's first dodge. Am I my brother's keeper? Translation. I didn't sign up for this. In the stillness, God does what judges wish they always could. He talks to the evidence. Your brother's blood cries out from the ground. No jury, no stenographer. Just truth ringing in a field that will never feel safe again. The sentence is precise. The soil that used to cooperate will now glare at you. You will till and sweat and get nothing but thistles and a bad attitude. You will wander eastward, away from the garden's memory and toward the edge of the map where place names get poetic. Nod, the land of wandering. And Cain trembles because judgment is heavy, but vengeance is heavier. Whoever finds me will kill me. God answers with an act that startles even your cynicism. A mark, not a bullseye, an embargo. Sevenfold trouble to anyone who touches you. Justice wraps itself in mercy like a bandage over a wound you caused. Let's talk geography. You head east with dust in your teeth and that hollow feeling of sleeping in a house that doesn't know your name. Then the surprise. Cain builds a city. The wanderer draws straight lines, sets stones, names streets, names the place after his son, Enoch. If you listen, you can hear hammers tapping out a second chance in minor key. It smells like wet clay and fresh beams, a cradle for people who will not know the field where everything went wrong. Modern comparison? It's like burning your career to the ground and then starting a non-profit that plants trees. Every new foundation is poured over old regret, but the walls still go up. Your neighbors bring bread but not questions. Everyone knows. No one speaks. Back to worship for a second. The story doesn't say God preferred shepherds to farmers. He preferred first and best to lukewarm and later. You feel it in your own chest. How offerings rot when they're excuses with ribbon on top. And you see the warning, kind and clinical. Sin is crouching at the door. That's not a jump scare. It's a veterinary note. It desires you, but you can master it. Leash it, or it walks you. And the mark? Don't miss the tone. This is not God shrugging. It's God guarding. A walking sermon strides east. Sin ruins, God restrains. So you live under a sky that remembers and a grace that refuses to forget you. The ground may not smile back anymore, but you still get to plant, which, considering the morning you just had, is wildly merciful. Let's talk about stubborn leadership. You're in Egypt, swatting flies the size of plums while water tastes like rust and regret. Pharaoh keeps hardening his heart like it's a CrossFit routine, and the verdict arrives by plague and then seawater. It's the only case in history where the prosecution was frogs, hail, darkness, and angels, with a closing argument delivered by the Red Sea. It's time for breakfast. Bad idea. You head to the Nile for a splash of morning water, maybe a nice barley porridge, and the river greets you looking like a crime scene. Fish float belly up. The reeds smell like pennies and hurt feelings. The magicians copy the trick like that helps, doubling the supply of unusable water. Ancient problem solving at its finest. You learn an early lesson. When God turns your tap to judgment, more taps won't fix it. Let's talk about frogs. They arrive like free samples you can't decline, on your bed, in your oven, in places you didn't know your house had. You walk, and it's squeak, squish, squeak, like living inside a stress ball. Pharaoh negotiates. Okay, fine, go. Then retracts like a faulty retractable pen. The frogs die. The land smells like an old gym bag. And the heart-hardening PR team issues another press release. No changes at this time. Then come the gnats, or lice, depending on which itchy translation you prefer. Dust becomes buzz. You scratch like you're wearing a tunic made of fiberglass. The magicians throw up their hands. This is the finger of God. Pharaoh shrugs. Flies follow, thick clouds of winged audacity, except not in Goshen. You peer over an invisible line. Chaos here, calm there. It's an awkward moment for the local deities. Livestock disease strolls in next. The air smells like hay and loss. Herds outside Egypt's protection falter, but Israel's flocks chew calmly, like they're in a commercial for Providence. Then boils, skin blossoms nobody ordered. You dab with cool water and avoid eye contact. The magicians, the guys who started this season strong, are suddenly working from home. Hail is where the sky starts throwing furniture. Fire rides down with ice. Weather that shouldn't exist, except it does. Moses gives a forewarning. Bring your servants and animals inside. Some Egyptians listen and live. Others do not, and the fields wear dents. It's the Bible's first weather alert system. Heed the word, save your stuff. Locusts sweep in next like a green, chittering vacuum. Whatever the hail spared, the locusts consider an appetizer. Your pantry suddenly looks like a minimalist lifestyle choice. Darkness follows, not dim, not cloudy. A darkness you can feel. 3 long days that taste like a power outage with no candles, no Wi-Fi, and the creeping realization you're not actually in charge of the sun. Ra files for PTO. God declines. Now it's time for dinner, but make it Passover. You borrow a lamb, roast it simply, paint doorposts with hyssop and hyphenated obedience, and eat, standing up, belt fastened, sandals on. The night's air is heavy and still. The destroyer passes over doors marked by faith, and Israel gets a calendar and a story. Egypt, finally, gets a go. You exit in a hurry, dough half risen, pockets full of borrowed jewelry and new courage. A pillar of cloud leads by day, fire by night, like divine GPS with no rerouting. Then the sea looms, water in front, chariots behind, fear everywhere. The wind blows. The waters stack like glassy corridors. You walk through on dry, impossible ground, listening to the hush of walls that should not stand. Egyptians follow. Chariots bog. The water returns with courtroom finality. Case closed. Leadership takeaway. When rivers turn to blood, frogs invade your pantry, and darkness clocks the sun, it might be time to pivot. Or, let the people go before the sea handles HR. You know that feeling when you bring home a souvenir and it turns out to be cursed? Achan did that, but with Jericho's devoted things. You can sense the collective cringe as Joshua reads the charges and the camp pulls back like a group chat gone silent. The punishment is swift, communal, and painfully Old Testament. Moral. If God labels something do not touch, he means it. Let's talk about victory. The dust of Jericho still hangs in the air like confetti that forgot how to land. Trumpets are quiet now. The echo of collapsing walls has faded into the hot hush of the plain. You can taste limestone and adrenaline. The order was simple. Everything in the city is devoted to the Lord. Burn it. Bring the metals to the treasury. Keep your hands to yourself. This is a sacred zone, not a yard sale. It's time for inventory. Somewhere between the rubble and the celebration, a hand lingers. Achan sees it. A beautiful cloak from Shinar, smooth as river water, patterned like status, whispering, "You'd look amazing in me." 200 shekels of silver, heavy in the palm, promising options. A gold bar, about 50 shekels, gleaming like a small sun. He sees, he covets, he takes, he hides. The tent smells like canvas, sweat, and new cloth. The hole under the mat is just deep enough to make a conscience quiet. Silver goes on the bottom, cloak in the middle, dirt on top. It's the world's first hidden folder, named something bland like tent repair. Now, The scouts yawn and suggest a light detachment. Don't trouble all the people. It's small. You jog up the slope expecting an easy morning. Instead, panic flickers through the ranks like a grass fire. Men fall, the rest run. Hearts melt and puddle in sandals. The camp goes silent in the way only defeat can teach. Your stomach remembers breakfast and regrets it. Joshua falls on his face, dust on his head, words spilling like someone who just watched a promise wobble. God answers, not with sympathy, but with diagnosis. Israel has sinned, not Achan. Israel. Corporate holiness means corporate consequences. The power strip has tripped. Nothing works until you find the one illegal plug. Let's talk about audits. Dawn, and the tribes line up. The air is cool and tense, like waiting outside HR with your badge dangling. Lot by lot, the circle tightens. Judah, then the clan of the Zerahites, then Zabdi's household, then Carmi's line. You can hear your own blood. There's no escape hatch, just the ancient equivalent of spotlight and silence. Achan steps forward, and the truth finally exhales. He confesses in 4 verbs that fit like rungs on a bad ladder. I saw, I coveted, I took, I hid. Runners sprint to his tent, fling back the mat, dig. The cloak peeks out with silky gilt. The silver clinks in a way that makes everyone's shoulders rise. They lay it all out before the Lord. And suddenly, it looks less like treasure and more like a receipt. It's time for sentencing. The valley of Ekor Trouble is dry and stony, the kind of place where heat stands still. The community gathers, not gleeful, not confused, just heavy. Achan, the cloak, the silver, the gold, all he has brought out. Stones are not metaphors here. They're real, sun-warmed, rough in the hand. The air fills with the percussive thud of consequences. Fire follows, ash settles. A great heap rises, a cairn that turns a private theft into a public landmark. Modern comparison. Think data breach that crashes the whole company because one person clicked the shiny link. Compliance wasn't busy work, it was covenant. This wasn't about fabric and metal. It was about trust, about whether Israel could be a people who treat God's share as God's. Afterward, the anger turns. The name sticks, Akor. And so does the lesson. Israel resets, repents, and the next time at Ai, they don't swagger, they obey. The plan is smarter. The outcome is different. The valley that hosted trouble becomes part of a map that still leads forward. Final note for your souvenir budget. If God stamps devoted on something, it's not a thrift store find. It's sacred clearance. Hands off, hard on. The gift shop is closed until further notice. It's time for breakfast. Bad idea, because the ground is about to become interactive. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram file what looks like a spiritual HR complaint against Moses and Aaron. The reply comes from below. The earth opens like a trapdoor nobody asked for. It's the only trial where the courtroom eats the defendants. Case dismissed. Also, floor closed. Let's talk about incense. The camp smells like warm goats and yesterday's manna, with a top note of tension. Korah, Levite, born into holy proximity, has gathered 250 chiefs, leaders with resumes and shiny reputations. They carry bronze censers, polished like arguments, and the line they chant is tidy enough to embroider. All the congregation is holy. Translation: why you and not us? You can feel the air tighten like a tent rope in a hot wind. Moses hears it and does the thing he always does when a disaster is brewing. He falls on his face. It's not drama, it's triage. Then he stands and proposes a test that smells like frankincense and accountability. Take censers, put fire and incense in them before the Lord. He will show who is his. It's simple, also terrifying. You don't play with incense the way you play with opinions. It's time for calls you don't want to make. Moses sends for Dathan and Abiram, Reubenites who add gasoline to grievances. They refuse to come and lob a line that clangs in your ears. You brought us up from a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness. Egypt is suddenly milk and honey when nostalgia rewrites trauma. Moses gets very angry, which for him means he words a prayer that sounds like steel. Do not regard their offering. Now the meeting shifts to field trip mode. You walk to the tents of Dathan and Abiram, where they stand at their entrances with spouses and children and all their stuff, goats, rugs, the whole catalogue. Moses draws a boundary you can see and feel. Get away from the tents of these men. Your feet move back on their own. Dust pricks your ankles. The sun seems to lean in, listening. The terms are clear. If these men die normally, then God didn't send me. But if the earth opens and swallows them alive, then you'll know rebellion is not a victimless hobby. He's hardly finished when the ground cleaves like a mouth, and the tent lines snap and vanish. You hear shouts, the rip of canvas, the low roar of soil sliding into itself. They go down with everything that insisted on staying close to arrogance. The earth closes as if zipping up a fact. Fire answers the other half. A blaze from the Lord consumes the 250 men offering incense. The bronze censers tumble in the ash with a sound that makes you swallow hard. Later, Eliezer gathers those censers, hammers them into plating for the altar, warm bronze hammered flat, sanctified by loss, so the community will always see the memo. Not everyone with a censer is a priest. It should be enough. It isn't. The next day the congregation murmurs, because people always think the problem is the messenger. You've killed the Lord's people, they say to Moses and Aaron, and a plague starts like a storm you can't see, but can feel in your lungs. Aaron grabs a censer, puts fire from the altar in it, note the source, and runs. You watch an old man sprint into a sea of suffering with nothing but smoke and obedience. He stands between the dead and the living, and the plague stops on his line like it just hit a wall of worship. It's time for signage. 12 staffs, one for each tribe, are laid in the tent of testimony. In the cool, dark overnight, Aaron's almond wood stick wakes up, buds, blossoms, and bears fruit all at once. The next morning smells sweet, like something alive in a place that should be simple and dead. God has made his point with flowers. The priesthood is not an open mic. Modern comparison. It's like a workplace all-hands rebellion that ends with the building opening up, the unauthorized keycards melting, HR laminating the lesson to the front desk, and the CEO personally stopping a cyber attack at the firewall. Subtle? No. Effective? Very. Takeaway for your calendar invite. Some meetings should be emails, and some censers should stay on the altar. Also, if the ground starts clearing its throat, maybe step back. You're on a road scented with dust and angel danger, riding a donkey that refuses to proceed like it knows tomorrow's headlines. Balaam loves a good fee and a flexible prophecy, which is a terrible combo. When the animal speaks and makes more sense than its owner, that's your cue. Heaven has entered the chat. Final outcome? Balaam goes down by the sword. His Yelp rating among prophets drops to 1 star, talks a lot, curses neighbors. Let's talk fees. The messengers from Moab arrive carrying promises that jingle. Balak, king of Moab, wants a spiritual hitman. You, professional prophet for hire, polish your "let me check with God" voice and sleep on it like that's not obviously a no. The answer is clear. Don't go, don't curse. But when the retainer goes up, so does your willingness to seek fresh guidance. God permits the trip, but only on one condition. Speak what I say, nothing else. It's a leash made of mercy. It's time for navigation. The morning is bright, the road rutted. Your donkey, reliable, underpaid, union of one, spots what you can't. An angel with a drawn sword standing in the path like a "do not enter" sign with wings. First, she veers into a field. You yank her back, mutter something about professionalism, and whack. Next, She squeezes past a vineyard wall, pinning your ankle. Your sandal now has a stone-shaped memory. Whack again. Finally, with nowhere left to go, she lies down. You raise the stick for round 3. Then your ride lodges a complaint. "What have I done to you?" she says, with the weary tone of someone who saved your life 3 times before breakfast. You answer like a man scolding the brakes on his car. God opens your eyes, and there he is, the angel, gleaming, immovable, not impressed. You realize the donkey was the adult in the room. The stick lowers. The temperature drops. The apology tastes like dust and humility. Let's talk altars. You reach Moab, where Balak is equal parts terrified and theatrical. He drags you to mountaintops like a real estate agent showing properties labeled perfect for cursing. 7 altars here, 7 altars there. Bulls and rams offered with the hopeful efficiency of someone trying different Wi-Fi routers. You step aside to hear from God, and the word that comes out of your mouth refuses to cooperate. Blessing, not cursing. A people set apart. A tent arrangement that somehow sounds gorgeous. Balak claps his hands over his ears like a toddler being offered broccoli. If you can't curse them, maybe just don't bless them, he pleads. New vantage point, same outcome. 3 times the blessing pours out. You even sneak in a messianic meteorology report. A star out of Jacob, a scepter rising. That one will age well. Modern comparison? It's like being hired to tank a presentation and delivering the keynote of the year. Your sponsor glares. The crowd applauds. Your inbox is complicated. It's time for the part nobody advertises on a business card. The oracles end, but the appetite for payment doesn't. Scripture's footnote, the kind that hums ominously, tells us you later counsel Moab on a workaround. If you can't beat Israel from the front, lure them from the side. Feasts, idols, seduction at pure. The fallout is catastrophic. A plague bites. Priests run. A spear flies. Judgment lands. Behind the tapestries and the fee schedules, motive finally shows its face. The last scene smells like leather and iron. Israel goes to war with Midian, and the list of the fallen includes your name. Not by lightning, not by lawsuit, by sword. Numbers 31-8. The man who tried to bend a blessing and then bent the people meets a verdict that doesn't bargain. Take away for your travel plans. When your donkey says no and an angel says stop, maybe cancel the trip. Also, if God hands you words, don't edit. The blessing will outrun every angle, and the invoice won't save you. In short, listen sooner, speak straighter, tip the donkey. Let's talk career strategies that age badly. Abimelech secures the throne by eliminating his brothers, then spends his reign picking fights with architecture. You're standing beneath a tower when a woman casually drops a millstone like it's a bowling ball of justice. He begs for an armor bearer to handle the final PR spin, but the inscription reads the same, crushed by hubris and masonry. Let's rewind. The air in Ophrah is dry and sour with dust and politics. Gideon is gone, and succession talks feel like a family group text that turned into an indictment. Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, local, ambitious, heads to Shechem with a pitch smoother than olive oil. I'm your bone and flesh, better one ruler than 70. The Shechemites nod over temple silver, 70 pieces from Baal-berith shrine, and the hiring spree begins. Worthless and reckless men, says the text, which is Old Testament for influencers with knives. They gather his brothers and execute them on one stone. One stone. The field smells like iron and silence. Only Jotham slips away, a single thread dangling from a torn garment. It's time for a speech nobody wants. Jotham climbs Mount Gerizim and tells a parable so pointed it doesn't need a spear. Trees look for a king. Olive, fig and vine all decline because they have actual value. The bramble accepts, promising shade it can't provide, and threatening fire it absolutely will. Translation: you chose a thorn bush, may it burn you. Then he runs, because parables are safer from a distance. Abimelech wears the crown like a man who thinks it will grow to fit. 3 years in, God sends an evil spirit between him and Shechem, meaning the alliances start squeaking. Shechem's men ambush travelers, crime spikes, trust evaporates. Gaal, son of Ebed, trash talks from the city gate like a podcast with bad facts. Zebul, the city's manager, DMs Abimelech. They're talking. Bring swords. You wake before dawn to the shuffle of feet and the cold stink of metal. Abimelech splits his forces and stages an ambush. By noon, the fields are full of retreat. The city gates clang shut on fear. Let's talk towers. Shechem's survivors run to the stronghold of El-Berith, like people who finally read the fire plan. Abimelech heads for the woods, puts an axe to a branch, and sets an example. What you saw me do, hurry and do as I have done. Everyone copies, the pile grows, smoke climbs, the tower becomes an oven. About 1,000 men and women die by the heat they thought would keep them safe. The ash tastes like regret. Abimelech salts the city site, a bitter sprinkle that says, nothing grows here for a while. It's pettiness married to policy. You'd think that would be enough fire for one villain. It isn't. He marches to Thebes, another city with a tower because the ancient world believes in multi-purpose floor plans, ground level for storage, top level for hope. The citizens flee upward. The door thuds shut. The attackers crowd the base. The smell of pitch floats in the air. Someone's prepping a rerun. Then a woman, anonymous, steady, lifts an upper millstone, round and heavy from mornings of flour and bread, and drops it. It hits skull with a crack that freezes everyone's ribs. It's time for spin. Abimelech feels the fracture, not just bone, but narrative. Draw your sword and kill me, he tells his armor-bearer, lest they say, a woman killed him. The blade flashes, the body stills. The chronicler's pen shrugs and writes it anyway. Judges doesn't take requests. Modern comparison. It's like staging a hostile takeover, burning the company, salting the parking lot, and then losing your legacy to a falling office copier pushed from HR by someone whose name never makes the org chart. You tried to control the story. The footnote controlled you. Epilogue smells like rain on ash. Thus God returned the evil of Abimelech, and all the evil of the men of Shechem. God returned on their heads. The bramble promised shade. Everyone got splinters. Takeaway for your leadership binder. If you build your throne on one stone, don't start a war with towers. Also, if you hear footsteps above you and flour dust in the air, maybe step back from the wall. History has a gravity of its own. The air smells like incense, politics, and Naboth's freshly stolen vineyard. Jezebel writes a letter that does more damage than 1,000 tweets, orchestrating a sham trial. Years later, the prophecy returns with boots. Jehu's chariot stops, the window opens, and gravity does the rest. Dogs finish the verdict. It's not subtle. Neither is God's stance on perjury and murder. Let's talk about letters. You're watching wax drip onto papyrus, the royal seal pressed down with that smug, permanent thunk. Jezebel signs Ahab's name like a woman who has never met a boundary she didn't reroute. The instructions are crisp and chilling. Proclaim a fast. Seat Naboth in a place of honor. cued two scoundrels to accuse him of blasphemy against God and king. It's courtroom theatre with a script, a cast, and no acquittal. The elders read the email, reply all with compliance, and start arranging the props. You can smell the hypocrisy. Sweet incense on the surface, smoke and rot underneath. It's time for civic piety. A fast implies something holy happened. In reality, the only thing lacking is integrity. Naboth gets the fancy seat as bait, public honor before public ruin. The false witnesses take the stand with faces like stale bread. Two voices lie in unison, because per the law, you need two to kill a man, which is efficient if you've already abandoned fear of God. Stones do their ancient work. The dust rises and settles, the crowd disperses, and a vineyard changes hands like a hot commodity in a market that forgot it's God's land to lease, not man's to steal. You can hear sandals on gravel when Ahab goes down to take possession, trying to look casual in a garden that's still haunted. Elijah is waiting with a question that tastes like iron. Have you murdered and also taken possession? The prophecy lands with the weight of God's memory. Dogs will lick your blood in the very place you played landlord, he says to Ahab. As for Jezebel, dogs will eat her by the wall of Jezreel. It's not poetry, it's scheduling. Years slide by with palace intrigue and weather reports, but prophecy doesn't get bored. Ahab dies later in battle, blood rinsed from a chariot where the dogs clock in right on time. Jezebel outlives him, trending as Queen Mother, and the palace continues as if God is a rumour. But then the chariots of Jehu roar like thunder on cobblestone. You smell horses, dust, and a coup cooling on the windowsill. Let's talk makeup. Jezebel paints her eyes with kohl, arranges her hair, and looks out at Jehu with a line that could cut ice. Is it peace, Zimri, murderer of your master? It's shade with historical footnotes. She's still directing the scene, head high, voice steady. Jehu lifts his face and skips the debate. Who is on my side? 2 or 3 eunuchs lean out, side characters stepping into the plot. And gravity applies golden rule theology to a tyrant. They throw her down. Blood spatters the wall. Horses do what horses do when they can't hit the brakes. Jehu goes in to eat and drink, because revolutions still get hungry. Then someone remembers the burial a king's daughter might deserve. What's left, after the dogs clock out, is a skull, feet, and palms. The rest has been filed under prophecy fulfilled. Modern comparison. It's like forging your boss's signature to evict a neighbour, trending for a decade on Palace Talk radio, and then losing the spin war to a windowsill and 3 exasperated employees. HR can't fix this one. The compliance department is canine. Here's your quiet takeaway while the room cools. God's patience is not approval, and delay is not denial. Jezebel's letters travelled fast. So did her judgment. It just took the scenic route. Every false witness will meet one who doesn't need any. And if you have to put on eyeliner to face a prophecy, maybe step away from the balcony. You're in a disguised chariot, because what could go wrong? Ahab looks like a man who can outrun judgment with costume changes and last-minute repentance. Then, a random arrow finds the one soft spot in the armor, the scriptural equivalent of a slow clap. The dogs licking up blood near the pool. Not a vibe. More like a post-credits scene that says, truth tracks faster than arrows. Let's set the scene. Ramoth Gilead smells like iron and hot leather. Chariots creak. Horses snort steam. You can taste grit on your teeth and anxiety in your throat. Ahab's alliance with Jehoshaphat looks great on parchment. Northern king meets southern king. Handshakes, banquet, joint ops memo. Then comes the staff meeting of prophets. 400 say, "Go up, you'll crush it," like a motivational poster with incense. Zedekiah even crafts iron horns, props department on point. Jehoshaphat, who still has a conscience that wakes up before lunch, asks if there's a prophet of the Lord left who isn't on retainer. Enter Micaiah, hauled in from the bread and water wing of the royal justice system. He first parrots the party line with a sarcasm so thick you could spread it on warm Peter. Then he drops the vision, a heavenly counsel, a lying spirit sent to lure Ahab into battle. The room chills. Ahab grimaces and orders him back to prison on a diet that sounds like sadness and crusts. "If you ever come back in peace," Micaiah says, "the Lord has not spoken by me." You can hear the mic drop between the chain rattles. It's time for costumes. Ahab suggests a tactical swap. "I'll disguise myself. You wear the king robes." You look at Jehoshaphat like, "Sir?" But the robes go on, and the armies roll out. The Aramean captains have standing orders. Aim for the king of Israel only. They see shiny robes, beeline for the southern king. And Jehoshaphat yelps with the kind of prayer that doesn't need a liturgy. The charioteers realize the mistake and peel off. Then the arrow happens. Not a named archer. Not a heroic slow motion shot. Just a man drawing his bow at random, which in this universe is where Providence likes to hide. The shaft whistles, slips between the scale armor and breastplate like a paperclip into a USB port, and buries itself where no amount of bravado can reach. You feel heat, then cold, then a spreading wet that smells like pennies and fear. "Turn your hand," Ahab tells the charioteer. "Get me out of the fray." The battle swirls. The king props himself up facing the Arameans like a man trying to hold off sunset with posture. All day the blood collects in the chariot's basin, a dark pool sloshing with each jolt. By evening, the shout goes up. Israel's army melts away in the honest grammar of defeat. Ahab slumps, breath stalls. He dies as the light drains off the stones. They carry the body back to Samaria, wash the chariot by the pool where the city's workers rinse and gossip. Dogs wander over, curious and efficient, and lap what has spilled. A harlot nearby scrubs linens. The scene is domestic, even boring, except for the prophecy glowing under it like a coal that finally touched tinder. Years earlier, after Naboth's vineyard theft, Elijah had said it. In the place where dogs licked Naboth's blood, dogs would lick yours. Ahab's sackcloth moment brought a delay, not a dismissal. Judgment took the scenic route, but it knew the way home. Modern comparison. It's like dodging accountability with PR, NDAs, and a new logo, then tripping over a loose floorboard labeled truth. You can change the outfit. You can rent a different chariot. You can even outsource the choir. But the arrow doesn't check your calendar. Takeaway for your armor checklist. Repentance is more than a wardrobe change, and prophecy doesn't read disguises. When God says, "Don't," and a prophet says, "Really don't," maybe skip the battle, or at least don't sit where the joint in the armor breathes, because sooner or later, the random things know exactly where to land. It's time for gifts. Terrible idea. Gehazi sneaks after Naaman like a kid trying to return a snack he already ate, pockets the silver, and returns to Elisha with the world's worst poker face. The diagnosis arrives immediately. The leprosy you saw leave Naaman just moved in with you. Suddenly, silver has a long-term maintenance cost. Let's set the scene. The sun has that late afternoon glare, the kind that turns every rock into a mirror. Naaman's chariot creaks like wealth on wheels. He smells like foreign perfume and battlefield victories. an important man freshly healed in a river, the locals complain, is basically a ditch. He offered gifts. Elisha declined. End of story. Except you feel the tug. 2 talents of silver would solve problems you haven't even invented yet. A couple of outfits could put your wardrobe out of its misery. You start walking faster. Your pitch is smooth as olive oil. My master changed his mind, you say, inventing 2 visiting disciples who need a little help, just a little. 2 talents, 2 garments. Your math is tidy, your conscience is not. Naaman, grateful and generous, ups the courtesy. Take 2 talents. He sends servants to carry it, because the generosity is heavy and your story isn't. The bags clink like applause you didn't earn. Let's talk storage. Back in Samaria, the hillside breeze smells like dust and fig leaves. You stash the silver in a house, tucked away, carefully, where it won't sparkle at the wrong time. The garments fold too easily, silk sighing into a stack that looks like a secret. You dismiss the servants with practiced gratitude. Then you compose your face for the prophet, which is difficult when your face was not designed for composition. "Where have you been, Gehazi?" Elisha asks, voice quiet enough to unsettle stone. "Your servant went nowhere," you say, which is technically the wrong answer, and spiritually a confession that you think God is nearsighted. Elisha doesn't raise his voice. He raises the truth. "Was not my spirit with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you?" Then he lists the shopping spree you were already planning in your head. Money, garments, olive groves, vineyards, sheep, oxen, servants. It's like he printed your Pinterest board. The diagnosis arrives without stethoscope or second opinion. Therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your offspring forever. The words land like a door that doesn't just close, it locks. Your skin pales, white as snow. Not the gentle postcard kind, but the clinical, chalky kind that says, "This won't wash off." The silver suddenly weighs different in your mind, like it's humming an unpleasant hymn. Shirts you haven't worn yet feel like costumes for a show that just got cancelled. Modern comparison. It's like lying on an expense report, cashing the reimbursement, and getting audited by a boss who also happens to be clairvoyant and deeply allergic to greed. The funds hit your account, the fine hits your future. Welcome to the subscription plan of sin. The first month feels free, the renewals hurt. Let's talk timing. Naaman's story wasn't just a healing, it was a billboard for grace. He arrived proud, left humble. He offered payment, discovered you can't Venmo the miracle. Your grab for compensation rewrote the moral in real time, from God gives freely to we take tips. Elisha's "not a time to take money" wasn't a budgeting note, it was a sermon title. You changed the channel. God turned off the TV. You walk out from Elisha's presence marked, visibly, permanently, instructively. The city looks the same. You don't. People step back a half pace, then another, the way folks do when they meet a lesson with legs. The silver glows in a corner you don't want to visit. The garments still fit technically, but wearing them would feel like dressing guilt in nicer fabric. Final thought for your gift registry. When grace is the headline, don't add a tip, jar. And if you must chase a chariot, make sure you're running toward obedience, not a closet you'll have to explain. The shine always fades. The story doesn't. You're in the temple, where everything smells like holiness and history. Uzziah barges in with a censer, ignoring the Levites' only sign and the 80 priests shouting, "Please don't." Leprosy blooms on his forehead like a divine post-it note. His punishment is isolation, a private suite of regret where pride and incense go to think about what they've done. Let's rewind to the good years. The city hums with prosperity. Fields outside Judah look like combed velvet. You can taste rain in seasons it should arrive. Hear iron clink from fortified towers Uzziah built like Lego castles for grown-ups. He engineers cistern systems, crushes enemies at the borders, invents siege machines that fling rocks with enthusiastic precision. Everything he touches turns competent. Then comes the hinge-line scripture whispers like a warning label. When he was strong, his heart was lifted up. Success taps pride on the shoulder and says, "Wanna drive? It's time for incense." The temple's inner glow feels like honey light poured over stone. The priests, white-robed, wide-eyed, form a human speed bump. Azariah, the high priest, steps forward with 80 colleagues, whose job description today is intervention. It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense. The words are calm but edged. You can hear listicles forming in their heads. Top 10. Reasons not to bring your ego into the holy place. Uzziah grips the censer anyway. The charcoal crackles. The room exhales in dread. Then the bloom. It starts on the forehead, because God loves a visual aid. White spreading like frost on a window you forgot to close. The priest point. Uzziah feels heat, then cold, then that sliding sensation when your stomach realizes your choices just made the news. He rushes out, and they rush him out, which is the rare moment pride and accountability agree. The diagnosis isn't up for debate. The law is clear. The symbolism is clearer. God has posted access denied in a font you can't argue with. Let's talk consequences. The palace rearranges itself. The king moves into a separate house, not dead, but not public, preserved and sidelined. Jotham, the son, starts handling the day-to-day, signing forms, attending ribbon cuttings, reading briefings. Uzziah's name still carries weight, but now there's a parenthesis after it. Leprous. He lives with a bell of sorts you can't hear, but everyone feels. The temple courts continue without him. The city gates swing. The calendar turns. He is present and absent at once. Modern comparison. It's like a CEO who built the company, then wandered into the server room with a magnet. Security badges get deactivated. An office across the courtyard opens up. Nice view, limited access. Your email still works. Your calendar doesn't. It's time for reflection, the long version. You imagine Uzziah days later, incense still ghosting his clothes, sitting with the itch of consequence and the ache of memory. He knows the law. He knows the line. He crossed it not by ignorance but by entitlement. The most boring and dangerous sin. Holiness isn't a sandbox. It's a boundary with purpose. Not to starve you, there's bread outside, but to keep the center blazing and the people alive. There's a quiet kindness wrapped in the severity. Uzziah is not executed. He's slowed. He's not erased. He's edited. Judah gets stability with Jotham. The king gets solitude with God. Even his burial is nuanced. In the field of burial that belonged to the kings, a phrase that respects the crown while nodding to the lesson. Here's your censer-sized takeaway. Gifted doesn't mean entitled, and sacred work belongs to the ones God calls, not the ones who feel ready. If a room smells like worship and 80 priests are saying, "Please don't," maybe hand someone else the matches. Pride will always volunteer. Humility reads the sign. Let's talk about rock bottom. Manasseh checks every forbidden box. Idols, sorcery, child sacrifice, and turns Jerusalem into a spiritual landfill. Assyrian captains arrive with hooks and bronze chains, and suddenly idolatry isn't cute anymore. The twist, he repents in captivity and is restored. proving God can unbend even the gnarliest paperclip of a king. Let's talk renovations. You're walking through Jerusalem and it smells like incense, charcoal, and bad theology. Hezekiah's reforms are yesterday's news. Manasseh is 12 when he starts, and 55 years later, he's the longest-running ad for Do Not Imitate. High places are rebuilt. Altars to Baal sprout like weeds after rain. A carved Asherah goes up inside the temple like someone wheeled in a golden calf and said, "Open concept." He lays altars to the starry hosts in the courts, where priests are supposed to serve. Night worship for the wrong lights. The valley of Hinnom hisses with child sacrifice. A heat you feel in your stomach, more than your skin. He consults omens, practices sorcery, hires mediums and spiritists, and, according to the record, fills Jerusalem with innocent blood. It's not just idolatry, it's spiritual arson. Prophets keep knocking. You can hear their voices in the background, tired and bright. Turn back, tear down, come home. Manasseh hits mark as spam. Warnings stack up like unopened mail on a royal desk. He insists the darkness is ambience. It isn't. It's time for foreign policy. The captains of the army of the king of Assyria arrive with iron hooks and bronze shackles. You smell iron and dust, a different kind of incense. A hook goes through the nose, humiliation turned into hardware, and Manasseh is dragged out of his own storyline. The destination is Babylon under Assyrian control. The dungeon air is damp with mildew and empire. Chains bite. The throne is a memory. The night is very long. Then comes the moment nobody expected from the guy who installed the horoscope in the temple. In distress, he humbles himself greatly before the God of his fathers. No spells, no mediums, no incantations, just prayer. The words are not recorded. The tears are. He asks for help like a man who finally believes he needs it. And the shock isn't his humility. It's heaven's kindness. God hears. God is moved. God brings him back to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. The locks click open. Pride goes down. Mercy stands up. Let's talk fruit worthy of repentance. The smell of the city hits different when you've breathed Babylonian basement. Manasseh gets busy, really busy. He removes foreign gods and the idol from the temple. He tears down the hilltop altars he built, flings them outside the city, and repairs the altar of the Lord. Offerings return, thanksgiving and peace instead of panic and panic disguised as worship. He tells Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. And while people still sacrifice at high places, habits die slowly. The direction of those offerings tilts back toward the right name. It isn't perfect, it's progress. Sometimes the miracle is not the fireworks, it's the cleanup crew. Modern comparison. It's like the CEO who tanked the company with terrible acquisitions, got perp walked in cuffs, hit rock bottom in a fluorescent holding cell, and then came back to run compliance and personally shred the bad contracts. The profits don't erase the bankruptcy record, but the books finally balance again. It's time to be honest about aftermath. Kings will chronicle the harm. Chronicles will preserve the hope. Both are true. His son Ammon watches the U-turn and declines to take it, running the old playbook until his own violent end. Generational momentum is sticky. Grace is stronger, but people still have to choose it. Manasseh's epitaph is strange and beautiful. He did unspeakable evil. He also humbled himself and rebuilt. The city he wounded is the place he starts repairing. That's not denial. That's redemption with a toolkit. Takeaway for your disaster plan. If God can unbend a king who turned the temple into a planetarium and the city into a crime scene, your mess is not special enough to scare him. Hooks can come out. Chains can fall. the forehead that once frowned at prophecy can bow. And if you're wondering how to begin, skip the sorcery and the spreadsheets. Start with a prayer that sounds like, help, and then grab a hammer. Grace forgives. Repentance cleans. Both smell like fresh air. The palace air tastes like fear and old secrets. Athaliah wipes out the royal heirs, or so she thinks, then rules by sheer volume and malice. When the hidden child Joash emerges, the people shout, the trumpets blare, and she cries treason, which, to be fair, is irony's favourite snack. She's escorted to the horse gate, where the sentence is carried out away from the sanctuary. Justice, but tidy. Let's rewind. The corridors of Jerusalem are hushed, carpets swallowing footsteps, curtains holding their breath. King Ahaziah is dead, collateral in someone else's power play, and his mother Athaliah moves like a storm in a hallway. She sees a vacuum and brings a broom, with blades. The chronicler writes it clean. She destroys the royal seed. You hear doors splinter, nurses scream, the awful quiet afterward. It's a palace purge in slow motion, and the crown lands on a head that shouts louder than the law. But the house of David has a habit of slipping through cracks you can't see. Enter Jehosheba, sister of Ahaziah, daughter of royalty, married to Jehoiada the priest. She lifts one infant nephew, Joash, from the nursery chaos, tucks him and his nurse into a side room, and vanishes into the temple precincts like a prayer with legs. For 6 years you smell cedar and oil lamps, hear Levite psalms instead of palace gossip, and watch a child grow behind holiness. Athaliah reigns nearby, unaware she's hosting a countdown. It's time for a plan that smells like frankincense and fresh courage. In the 7th year, Jehoiada calls in the captains, the carites and the guards, slides covenant across the table, and whispers logistics. You can feel the choreography. 3rd of you on duty at the palace, 3rd at the gate, sir, 3rd at the gate behind the guard. Rotate, watch, don't blink. Whoever enters the ranks must be put to death. Not because they're eager for blood, but because the line between sanctuary and state is about to become a fuse. Then the reveal. Jehoiada brings out a boy with bedhead and destiny. The crown goes on, the testimony is placed in tiny hands, oil is poured, and the trumpets let loose. You hear people, tired, hopeful, shouting, "Long live the king," like water after drought. Priests smile like men remembering a promise. Guards bang shields in rhythm. The courtyard becomes an echo chamber of covenant. Athaliah hears it and does what tyrants always do. She assumes any joy she didn't schedule is illegal. She marches into the temple, sees a 7-year-old wearing her throne, and tears her royal fabric while screaming treason, treason, which is a wild accusation to lob at a child who just graduated from the small sandals aisle. Jehoiada doesn't argue. He doesn't sermonize. He gives a sentence with boundaries. Bring her out between the ranks, and whoever follows her, kill with the sword. Also, do not kill her in the house of the Lord. Justice, please, but not in here. They escort her to the horse gate, the passage connected to the king's house, where mounts snort and iron shoes ring like tiny hammers. The air tastes like dust and rain long overdue. The crowd keeps its distance. The sanctuary remains unstained. The sword flashes. The rain ends. The city exhales in one long, weary breath. Tidy doesn't mean painless. It means contained. Let's talk aftermath. The people surge, not to loot, but to dismantle blasphemy. They topple Baal's temple like a rotten shelf, smash the altars, and remove Matan the priest of Baal from payroll. Jehoiada cuts a covenant between the Lord, the king, and the people that feels like a spine being straightened. Gates are set, guards stationed, order threaded back through streets that had been wearing panic like a cloak. The city grows quiet. Not empty quiet, healed quiet. Modern comparison. It's like a boardroom coup where the acting CEO deletes the entire family line from the org chart, only for HR and the chaplain to roll out a 7-year-old heir with a stack of bylaws and a brass band. The press conference happens in the company chapel, and security walks the ousted exec out the service entrance, so the sanctuary doesn't need carpet cleaning. Facilities appreciates this. Joash is 7. He waves like he just learned how. Jehoiada stands beside him like a lighthouse that refuses to blink. The people go home with something they haven't carried in a while. Peace that fits. And the horse gate stands there. An architectural footnote that says, when judgment must come, take it outside. Takeaway for your crisis binder. God can preserve a promise in a broom closet and raise a king from a cradle. Loud isn't the same as lawful. And if you ever find yourself yelling treason at a coronation happening under a covenant, maybe check the mirror first and stay away from windows. You're in Persia, where robes swish and egos float like perfume. Haman plans a genocide and builds a gallows as tall as his pride, then wakes up in the world's fastest plot reversal. The king can't sleep, Esther can talk, and Mordecai's resume is suddenly trending. Final ruling, hanged on his own hardware. It's the neatest boomerang in scripture. Let's set the stage. Haman is the second most powerful man in the Persian Empire, which means he's practically allergic to humility. When Mordecai the Jew refuses to bow to him, on religious grounds, mind you, Haman doesn't just plot revenge against one guy. He escalates to ethnic cleansing. That's the bureaucratic equivalent of nuking your neighbor's house because their dog barked at you. He convinces King Xerxes to issue a decree authorizing the extermination of all Jews across 127 provinces. Paperwork signed, sealed, delivered. Haman even builds a 75-foot gallows specifically for Mordecai, because apparently regular-sized gallows lack the necessary theatrical flair. But then insomnia strikes the palace. The king can't sleep, so he orders the royal chronicles read aloud, ancient Persia's version of counting sheep. Turns out Mordecai once foiled an assassination plot against Xerxes, and nobody ever thanked him. The king asks what honor Mordecai received. Answer, zilch. Just as he's pondering this oversight, Haman shows up at dawn to request permission to hang Mordecai. The king, however, has a different question. What should be done for someone I want to honor? Haman, naturally assuming this is about him, suggests a royal parade featuring the honoree in the king's robes, riding the king's horse, led by a noble who proclaims his greatness. Perfect plan. The king agrees. Excellent, he says. Go do exactly that for Mordecai the Jew. Haman's soul leaves his body. He has to personally parade his enemy through the streets, announcing Mordecai's honor while wearing his own humiliation like a sandwich board. When he gets home and complains to his wife and friends, they deliver the understatement of the millennium. If Mordecai is Jewish, you're doomed. Meanwhile, Queen Esther, who's been hiding her Jewish identity, invites the king and Haman to a private banquet. At the second dinner, she drops the bomb. Haman's genocide decree targets her people. She's on the hit list. The king, furious, steps out to cool off. Haman, panicking, falls on Esther's couch to beg for mercy. The king returns, sees Haman sprawled over his wife, and interprets it as assault. One of the eunuchs helpfully mentions that 75-foot gallows Haman built The king's response: hang him on it. Within hours, Haman swings from his own construction project. The Jews are granted the right to defend themselves. Mordecai gets Haman's job and signet ring, and Esther's courage becomes legend. Its poetic justice so clean it practically winks. Build gallows, become gallows content. The Bible doesn't waste time on moral ambiguity here. It just watches the trap snap shut. The goblets clink, the music swells, and you're drinking from temple vessels like that's fine. Then a hand writes on the wall, and the party vibe does a hard left into nope. Daniel reads the verdict. Weighed, measured, found wanting. Tonight. The Babylonian night ends with the city taken and the king removed. Moral: don't toast yourself with stolen holiness. Let's set the table. Oil lamps flicker against plaster. The shadows do their little dance. You can smell roasted meats, spiced wine, and the faint tang of politics. Belshazzar, co-regent, son of Nabonidus, throws a feast for 1,000 nobles because nothing says we're safe like very loud denial. Someone suggests a party upgrade. Bring out the gold and silver vessels from Jerusalem's temple. You watch waiters carry holiness like party glassware. The playlist switches to praise the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which is basically a hymnal written by a hardware store. It's time for the hand. No body, no arm, just a hand, pale and self-possessed, writing in the lamp-lit plaster near the lampstand, where everybody can see it and nobody wants to. The music hiccups. The king's face drops 2 shades. His knees knock like castanets. His hip joints suddenly vote no confidence. The nobles stare, hoping someone else understands cursive from heaven. Enter the royal problem solvings. Routine. Call the enchanters, Chaldeans, astrologers. Promise purple, gold, and third-place power to whoever decrypts the message. Third, make sense when your dad is first, and you're second. They try, they fail. The wall waits. The room smells increasingly like panic. Then the queen, likely the queen mother, the one who remembers things, glides in with the calm of a person not impressed by goblets. There's a man in your kingdom, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. Translation: try Daniel. He read your grandfather Nebuchadnezzar like a scroll and has not aged out of wisdom. Daniel arrives in no mood for pageantry. He declines the gifts before he hears the problem. Keep your rewards. Give your prizes to someone else. Then he gives a short history lecture no one asked for. Nebuchadnezzar was great until he got proud, and God humbled him among the animals until he learned who rules. But you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this. You lifted yourself against the Lord of heaven. You drank from his vessels. You praised materials. You ignored the one who holds your breath. It's not a scolding, it's a diagnosis. Now the handwriting. Mene, mene, tekel, parsin. Daniel reads it like someone opening mail addressed to the king. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom and brought it to an end. Mene again, because sometimes judgment repeats itself for those in the back. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Peres, the singular of Parsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The words fit like locks clicking open. Belshazzar tries to salvage ceremony. He orders the purple robe draped, the gold chain hung, the proclamation shouted, Daniel is third ruler for the rest of the evening. Meanwhile, the river gates stand open. The enemy is already walking the dry canal like a quiet rumor, and the city's boasting has lost its echo. That night, not next quarter, not after a review, Belshazzar is killed. Darius the Mede receives the kingdom. The plaster keeps the handwriting. The banquet hall keeps the silence. Modern comparison? It's like hosting a victory gala while your firewall is down, projecting the company logo on the side of the building with stolen charity funds, and then watching a floating cursor type your termination letter in real time. You can promote the IT guy to third in command. The breach doesn't care. Takeaway for your glassware policy. Sacred is not decor. Breath is borrowed. And if a hand starts writing during dessert, cancel the after party and find Daniel. Or better, don't start the toast. You can hear the chains and the hum of bureaucracy. The governors trap Daniel with a law crafted like a mousetrap made of flattery. The lion's den opens and closes without a scratch on the defendant. At sunrise, the accusers inherit their own sentence. It's not pretty. The lions write a very convincing amicus brief. Daniel is old, competent, and annoyingly incorruptible. He's one of 3 administrators overseeing the satraps, regional governors, of the Medo-Persian Empire under King Darius. The king is so impressed with Daniel's work ethic and integrity that he plans to promote him above everyone else. This does not sit well with the other officials, who immediately begin an audit of Daniel's life, searching for scandal, embezzlement, laziness, anything. They find nothing. 0. The man doesn't even expense his lunches questionably, so they pivot to the one thing Daniel won't compromise on: his religion. These bureaucrats approach the king with a proposal wrapped in flattery. They suggest a 30-day decree. Anyone who prays to any god or human except King Darius should be thrown into the lion's den. It's framed as a loyalty test, a way to unify the kingdom under the king's authority. Darius, either flattered or distracted, signs it into law. Per Medo-Persian legal tradition, the decree is irrevocable once issued. No backsize, no amendments, no executive pardons. The ink is permanent. Daniel hears about the law and does exactly what he's always done. He goes home, opens his windows toward Jerusalem, and prays 3 times a day. He doesn't hide, doesn't whisper, doesn't stage a private protest. He prays openly, as he always has. The satraps catch him in the act, because of course they're watching, and immediately run to the king with the evidence. Daniel is defying your decree, your majesty. He prays to his God. Darius realizes he's been played. He spends the rest of the day trying to find a legal loophole, some technicality to save Daniel, but the law is airtight. By sunset, he has no choice. Daniel goes into the den. The king seals the entrance with his own signet ring and spends a sleepless night fasting and pacing. At dawn, he rushes to the den and calls out, half hoping, fully desperate, "Daniel, has your God been able to rescue you?" Daniel's voice comes back, calm and intact. "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They haven't touched me." The king is thrilled. He orders Daniel pulled out immediately. Not a scratch, not a bruise, not even a wrinkled robe. Then comes the reversal. Darius orders the accusers arrested, along with their wives and children. All of them are thrown into the same den. The text notes they don't even reach the floor before the lions overpower them. It's brutal, swift, and total. The very trap they engineered for Daniel consumes them instead. Darius then issues a new decree. Everyone in his kingdom must fear and reverence Daniel's God. The lion's den becomes a theological landmark, and Daniel's career continues without interruption. The setup was flawless. The execution, ironic. It's time for civil war, scented with cedar and terrible ideas. Absalom steals the hearts of Israel, then rides into battle with hair that needs its own postal code. The mule runs on. The hare stays put. Joab's spears settle. the succession. A tomb is no consolation prize. It's a warning label. Absalom is King David's third son, and he's blessed with the kind of physical beauty that stops traffic. The text specifically mentions his hair. It's so thick and heavy that when he cuts it annually, it weighs about 5 pounds. He's also charismatic, politically savvy, and nursing a serious grudge. Years earlier, his half-brother Amnon raped Absalom's sister Tamar. David did nothing about it, so Absalom took matters into his own hands and had Amnon killed, then fled into exile for 3 years. Eventually, he's allowed back to Jerusalem, but the relationship with his father is iced over. Absalom interprets David's inaction and emotional distance as weakness, and ambition starts whispering. Absalom launches a charm offensive that would make a campaign manager weep. He stations himself at the city gate, intercepts people coming to see the king for justice, and tells them their cases are completely valid, but the king is too busy to hear them. "If only I would judge," he sighs. "I'd make sure you got justice." When people bow to him, he pulls them up and kisses them. He does this for 4 years. He's systematically stealing the loyalty of Israel, one handshake at a time. When he finally declares himself king in Hebron, enough people follow him that David has to flee Jerusalem in the middle of the night. It's a coup built on charm and calculated sympathy. The rebellion grows. Absalom enters Jerusalem, takes his father's concubines publicly on a rooftop, a deliberate, humiliating power move, and consolidates his claim. But when it's time for battle, Absalom's advisors tell him to wait and gather more forces. He ignores the better military counsel and rushes into the forest of Ephraim with his army. That's where his vanity meets its match. During the battle, Absalom is riding his mule beneath the thick branches of a great oak tree. His legendary hair, untied, flowing, probably quite dramatic in the wind, gets caught in the branches. The mule keeps going. Absalom is left dangling in midair, suspended by his own crowning glory. One of David's soldiers spots him and reports it to Joab, David's commander. Joab doesn't hesitate. Despite David's orders to deal gently with Absalom, Joab drives 3 javelins into his heart while he's still hanging there, helpless. 10 of Joab's armor-bearers finish the job. They throw Absalom's body into a pit and pile rocks over it. Absalom had built himself a monument earlier, worried he'd have no son to carry on his name. Irony delivers. His monument stands, but his body is buried under stones in an unmarked grave. The civil war collapses. David mourns loudly, bitterly, excessively. So much so that his own troops feel ashamed for winning. Absalom's beauty, charisma, and hair got him far. But vanity suspends, and rebellion gets buried. You're behind city walls with a rebel who announced, "We have no share in David," and then forgot to pack a supply plan. Joab arrives with battering rams. A wise woman arrives with better strategy. Before you can say negotiated surrender, Sheba's head makes a brief and final appearance over the wall. Siege cancelled. Neighborhood watch. Effective. The context is messy. Israel has just survived Absalom's rebellion, and the nation is politically fractured. David is back on the throne, but tensions between Judah and the northern tribes are running hot. A troublemaker named Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjamite, seizes the moment to stir up dissent. He blows a trumpet and shouts, "We have no share in David, no part in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, Israel." It's a rallying cry for secession, an attempt to pull the northern tribes away from David's rule. Enough people listen that Sheba manages to gather a following and lead them north. David, freshly reinstated and not interested in another civil war, orders his commander Joab to hunt Sheba down before the rebellion gains momentum. Joab mobilizes quickly. He pursues Sheba and his followers through Israel until they retreat into the fortified city of Abel Beth Makkah, up near the northern border. Sheba and his men barricade themselves inside, and Joab's forces begin constructing siege rams, preparing to batter down the walls and destroy the entire city to get to one man. It's a brutal strategy, but Joab is nothing if not thorough. The siege machinery is in place. The attack is imminent. The city is about to be leveled. Then a wise woman from the city calls out from the wall. She asks to speak with Joab directly. When he approaches, she identifies herself as a representative of a peaceful, faithful city in Israel, a place known for wisdom and counsel. "Why do you want to swallow up the Lord's inheritance?" she asks. Joab clarifies his mission. "I'm not here to destroy the city. I'm here for one man, Sheba, son of Bichri, who has rebelled against King David. Hand him over and we'll withdraw." The woman's response is immediate and practical. "His head will be thrown to you from the wall." She goes back into the city and makes her case to the people. The logic is airtight. One man's rebellion shouldn't cost an entire city its existence. Why should innocent people die to protect someone who brought an army to their doorstep? The citizens agree. They execute Sheba, decapitate him, and toss his head over the wall to Joab. Joab sounds the trumpet. The siege is called off. His troops withdraw. The city is spared. David's authority is re-established without further bloodshed. It's a story of proportionality and pragmatism. The wise woman doesn't waste time on speeches about justice or loyalty. She identifies the problem, Sheba, and proposes a solution that saves lives. The city doesn't harbor the rebel out of misguided solidarity. They remove the threat efficiently. Sheba's head becomes the ticket to survival. Joab gets what he came for. The city stays intact, and the rebellion dies before it spreads. One wise voice, one decisive action, and the siege ends before lunch. The lesson is clean. Protect the community, not the troublemaker. And if someone brings war to your gate, sometimes the neighborhood watch delivers the fastest verdict. Let's talk about long memories. Shimei curses David during exile and later gets parole from Solomon, with a "do not leave Jerusalem" clause printed in bold. A couple of runaway servants and one impulsive trip later, the condition is broken. The sentence, delayed but not forgotten, is enforced. Wisdom literature, maybe stay put. Shimei, son of Gera, is a Benjamite with a family connection to Saul's house, and he holds a grudge. When David is fleeing Jerusalem during Absalom's rebellion, vulnerable and humiliated, Shimei sees an opportunity. He follows David along the ridge, pelting him with stones and dirt, cursing him publicly. Get out, you murderer, you scoundrel," he shouts. "The Lord has repaid you for all the blood you shed in the household of Saul." David's men want to kill Shimei on the spot. Abishai literally asks permission to go cut off his head. But David stops them. He's either exercising restraint or too exhausted to care. He lets Shimei curse. When David's fortunes reverse and he returns to power after Absalom's death, Shimei immediately switches tactics. He rushes to meet David at the Jordan River, falls at his feet, and begs for mercy. "May my Lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem." David, in a moment of magnanimity or political calculation, grants him a reprieve. He swears an oath that Shimei will not be put to death. Shimei walks away alive, but the incident isn't forgotten. Years later, David is on his deathbed, giving final instructions to his son Solomon. Among his last words, Remember Shimei. David tells Solomon, "You are a man of wisdom. You will know what to do to him. Bring his grey head down to the grave in blood." It's a deathbed advisory, a delayed execution order wrapped in political cover. David swore not to kill Shimei himself, but he's passing the responsibility to Solomon. The curse during exile wasn't forgiven, just postponed. Solomon doesn't act immediately. Instead, he summons Shimei and offers him a deal. Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there. Don't leave, ever. The day you leave and cross the Kidron Valley, you can be sure you will die. Your blood will be on your own head. Shimei agrees. It's house arrest disguised as generosity, and the terms are crystal clear. Shimei lives in Jerusalem for 3 years without incident. Then 2 of his slaves run away to Gath. Shimei, apparently forgetting or dismissing the king's explicit command, saddles his donkey and goes to Gath to retrieve them. He finds his slaves, brings them back, and returns to Jerusalem. Problem solved, except Solomon hears about it. The king summons Shimei and reminds him of the oath, the warning, the very specific boundary he agreed not to cross. Why then did you not keep your oath to the Lord and obey the command I gave you? Shimei has no defense. Solomon orders Benaiah, his enforcer, to strike Shimei down. He's executed immediately. The text notes that the kingdom was now established in Solomon's hands. Shimei's death isn't just personal justice. It's political housekeeping, the removal of a lingering threat tied to Saul's old faction. The rebellion he represented is finally closed. The sentence was always there, written in blood and memory. Shimei just chose to test whether the boundaries were real. They were. The scent of the palace courtyard is dry dust and old grudges. Joab is brilliant at war and disastrous at justice, stacking up blood guilt like trophies. Solomon's reign opens with a broom. Joab grabs the horns of the altar, hoping for a loophole. There isn't one. Justice arrives, wearing royal orders. Joab, son of Zeruiah, is David's nephew and his most effective military commander. He's ruthless, strategically brilliant, and personally loyal to David, up to a point. But Joab has a pattern of taking matters into his own hands when he disagrees with the king's decisions, and his methods tend to involve premeditated murder. The first major incident is Abner, the commander of Saul's army, who defects to David. David welcomes him and makes peace. Joab, whose brother Asahel was killed by Abner in battle, doesn't. He lures Abner aside under the pretense of a private conversation and stabs him in the stomach. David publicly mourns and curses Joab, but doesn't punish him. It sets a precedent. The second murder is Amasa. After Absalom's rebellion, David appoints Amasa, who had sided with Absalom, as commander of the army, effectively replacing Joab. When David sends Amasa to mobilize troops against Sheba's rebellion, he takes too long. Joab, leading his own forces, intercepts Amasa. He greets him warmly, reaches out as if to kiss him, and while Amasa is off guard, Joab drives a dagger into his belly. Amasa dies in a pool of blood on the road. Joab resumes command and completes the mission. Again, David does nothing. Then there's the matter of Absalom. During the battle in the forest of Ephraim, David explicitly orders his commanders to deal gently with his son. Joab ignores this. When he finds Absalom hanging by his hair from a tree, he drives 3 javelins through his heart and has his men finish him off. David is devastated, but Joab argues it was necessary for the kingdom's stability. He may have been right tactically, but he directly violated a royal command and killed the king's son. Finally, in David's old age, when the succession question looms, Joab backs Adonijah instead of Solomon. It's a political miscalculation. Solomon becomes king, and Joab knows he's in danger. When Solomon begins consolidating power and settling his father's unfinished business, Joab flees to the tabernacle and grabs the horns of the altar, the traditional place of asylum for those seeking mercy. It's a desperate move, a legal Hail Mary. He's banking on the sanctity of the altar to protect him. Solomon sends Benaiah to execute him. Benaiah finds Joab clinging to the altar and relays his refusal to leave. Solomon's response is clear: strike him down there. The altar offers no protection for deliberate, premeditated murder, especially not for someone with Joab's track record. Benaiah obeys. Joab is killed at the altar, and his blood guilt, specifically for the murders of Abner and Amasa, is removed from David's house and placed on Joab's own head. The text frames it as justice long delayed but finally executed. Joab's loyalty to David was real, but it was always conditional and self-serving. He eliminated rivals, ignored orders, and expected his military success to grant him immunity. It didn't. Solomon's reign required a clean slate, and Joab's accumulated guilt made him a liability. The horns of the altar couldn't erase decades of unauthorized killings. The sanctuary was never designed to shelter someone who murdered in cold blood and expected political protection. Joab bet on his indispensability. Solomon called the bluff. You're listening to bleating sheep that sound suspiciously like disobedience. Saul spares what God said to destroy and performs a sacrifice like a man trying to fix a smoke alarm with bread. The kingdom tears from his hands. A spear ends his last chapter on a battlefield. David's lament proves you can grieve a complicated man and still respect the verdict. Saul starts out well. He's physically impressive, head and shoulders above everyone else, chosen by God and anointed by Samuel to be Israel's first king. Early in his reign, he leads successful military campaigns and unites the tribes. But cracks appear quickly. When Samuel is delayed before a battle with the Philistines, Saul grows anxious. The troops are deserting, the enemy is assembling, and the prophet hasn't shown up to offer the required sacrifice. So Saul takes it upon himself to perform the burnt offering, a priestly function he has no authority to execute. Samuel arrives just as Saul finishes and delivers the first verdict. You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The decisive break comes with the Amalekites. God commands Saul, through Samuel, to completely destroy them, people, livestock, everything, as judgment for their attack on Israel during the Exodus. The instructions are explicit. Total destruction, no exceptions. Saul attacks and defeats the Amalekites, but he spares King Agag and the best of the sheep, cattle, and plunder. When Samuel arrives, Saul greets him cheerfully. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. Samuel's response is immediate. What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Saul scrambles to explain. The people spared the best animals to sacrifice to the Lord. Samuel cuts through the excuse. Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Saul's kingdom unravels from there. The Spirit of the Lord departs. David is anointed as his replacement. Saul becomes tormented, paranoid, and consumed with jealousy of David's success and popularity. He spends years hunting David through the wilderness, throwing spears, making reckless vows, and oscillating between moments of clarity and episodes of murderous rage. His leadership deteriorates, his family suffers, his relationship with Samuel is severed, and when Samuel dies, Saul is left spiritually isolated. The final scene is Mount Gilboa. Saul and his sons are fighting the Philistines. The battle goes badly. His sons, including Jonathan, are killed. Saul is critically wounded by archers. Rather than let the Philistines capture and torture him, he asks his armor-bearer to finish him. The armor-bearer refuses. Saul falls on his own sword. The next day, the Philistines find his body, decapitate him, strip off his armor, and fasten his corpse to the wall of Beth-shan as a trophy. It's a brutal, humiliating end for Israel's first king. David, despite years of being hunted, composes a lament for Saul and Jonathan. He mourns them publicly, forbids celebration, and honors Saul's memory even while acknowledging the tragedy. The lament is genuine. David grieves the loss of a complicated man and a kingdom that could have been. Saul's story is a slow-motion collapse built on partial obedience, religious performance substituting for surrender, and the refusal to fully submit. He kept the sheep. He lost the kingdom. The bleating was the sound of a rain ending. It's time for a party, featuring Samson as a prop and the god Dagon as the headliner. The pillars groan, the roof hesitates, and then everything comes down. The lords who bought Delilah's haircut package learn that hiring a blind strongman for entertainment is a safety violation. Verdict delivered by architecture, again. Samson's story up to this point is a mess of supernatural strength, poor romantic choices, and escalating conflict with the Philistines. He's been a one-man insurgency for 20 years, killing Philistines with jawbones, foxes, and his bare hands. But his weakness for women, specifically his love for Delilah, finally does him in. The Philistine lords offer Delilah 1,100 pieces of silver each to discover the source of Samson's strength. She nags, manipulates, and wears him down until he tells her the truth. His hair has never been cut. It's the sign of his Nazirite vow, the physical marker of his consecration to God. Once she knows, she lulls him to sleep and calls in a barber. The 7 braids come off. His strength leaves. The Philistines capture him, gouge out his eyes, bind him in bronze chains, and put him to work grinding grain in a Gaza prison like an animal. But hair grows back. The Philistines either forget this detail or don't care. By the time they decide to throw a massive celebration in honor of their god Dagon, crediting him with delivering Samson into their hands, Samson's hair has regrown. The temple is packed, 3,000 people on the roof alone, watching the festivities below. The Philistine lords are all there, the elite of the nation, gathered to mock the man who terrorized them for 2 decades. They bring Samson out to perform, to entertain them. He's blind, weakened, humiliated, led around by a servant boy. They laugh. They praise Dagon. They feel safe. Samson asks the boy leading him to let him rest against the pillars that support the temple. It's framed as a simple request. He's tired. He needs support. The boy positions him between the 2 central pillars. Samson prays. It's a short prayer, focused and desperate. Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then he braces himself, one hand on each pillar, and pushes with everything he has. The pillars crack. The roof buckles. The temple collapses in a roar of stone and timber. Everyone inside dies. The lords, the worshippers, the mockers on the roof. The text notes that Samson killed more Philistines in his death than during his entire life. It's a catastrophic structural failure with a body count in the thousands, and it decapitates the Philistine leadership in one moment. The irony is sharp. The Philistines paid Delilah to neutralize Samson, captured him, blinded him, and paraded him as proof of Dagon's superiority over Israel's God. But they brought him into their most important religious building, positioned him between the load-bearing pillars, and forgot that his God doesn't quit. Samson's last act is mutual destruction. He dies with them, but it's also a final declaration that the strength was never his own. The Philistine lords bought tickets to their own funeral. The roof came down on their theology, their leadership, and their celebration. Dagon couldn't hold up the ceiling. You're at Caesarea, where Herod dresses like a chandelier and the crowd shouts, "A god!" Instead of deflecting, he absorbs, always a mistake in a universe with angels. The judgment is sudden. Struck down and eaten by worms, Luke notes it, Josephus elaborates. Vanity projects, cancelled. Herod Agrippa, eyes politically savvy, religiously observant enough to keep the Jewish leaders happy, and Roman enough to maintain imperial favour. He's been persecuting the early church. He executed James, the brother of John, and arrested Peter, though Peter escaped through angelic intervention. By the time we reach this scene, Herod is at the height of his power, ruling over a reunified Jewish kingdom under Roman oversight. He's managed to consolidate more territory than any ruler since his grandfather, Herod the Great. He's respected, feared, and very aware of his own importance. The setting is Caesarea, the coastal Roman administrative capital. Herod is dealing with a diplomatic dispute. The people of Tyre and Sidon have offended him somehow, and since their regions depend on Judea for food, they're in a bad position. They secure the support of Blastus, Herod's chamberlain, and seek an audience to make peace. Herod schedules a public address. This isn't a closed-door negotiation. It's a performance. He puts on his royal robes, which according to the Jewish historian Josephus, were made of silver fabric that shimmered brilliantly in the sunlight. He sits on his throne and delivers his speech. The crowd's reaction is immediate and excessive. "This is the voice of a god, not of a man," they shout. It's the kind of flattery that would make any sane person uncomfortable, the kind that begs for a correction. Herod has every opportunity to stop it, to redirect the praise, to remind everyone that he's just a man in expensive clothes. He says nothing. He accepts it. He lets the worship hang in the air and doesn't deflect. In that moment of silence, the verdict is sealed. An angel of the Lord strikes him down immediately, not later that day, not after he goes home, right there, in front of everyone. The text says he's eaten by worms and dies. Josephus provides more medical detail, describing agonizing abdominal pain that lasts 5 days before Herod finally succumbs. The description suggests some kind of internal parasitic infestation or acute intestinal condition, vivid and gruesome. Either way, the man who accepted divine honors is consumed from the inside out. The contrast is deliberate. Herod silences apostles, kills James, imprisons Peter, and accepts worship. Meanwhile, the word of God continues to spread and multiply. Herod's reign ends in worms and agony. The church he tried to crush keeps growing. The message is blunt. Steal God's glory, and the universe corrects the error. Herod had the stage, the robes, the applause, and the chance to deflect. He chose vanity. The worms chose him. The early church took notes, and so do we. Glory belongs elsewhere, and accepting what isn't yours has biological consequences. The air is cool and heavy in Gethsemane, perfumed with olive leaves and inevitability. Judas arrives with a kiss that tastes like metal, and the arrest unfolds with lanterns and torches. The regret comes too late. 30 coins clatter in a temple that can't take them back. The field of blood gets a new name, and you feel the ache of a soul that ran out of midnight. Judas Iscariot is one of the 12 disciples, the group's treasurer, and the man who will become history's most infamous betrayer. The Gospels hint at his motives. John mentions he's a thief who skims from the money bag, but the full picture remains frustratingly opaque. Was it greed, disillusionment, political miscalculation, a belief that forcing Jesus' hand would trigger the messianic revolution? The text doesn't psychoanalyze, it just records the transaction. Judas approaches the chief priests and asks what they'll pay him to hand Jesus over. They settle on 30 pieces of silver, the price of a slave in Jewish law. It's insultingly low for betraying a rabbi, but Judas takes it. From that moment, he watches for an opportunity. That opportunity comes in the Garden of Gethsemane, late at night after the Passover meal. Jesus has just prayed in agony while his disciples slept. Judas arrives with a crowd, chief priests, elders, soldiers, armed with swords and clubs, carrying torches. The signal is prearranged. Whomever Judas kisses, that's the one to arrest. It's intimate and cold, a gesture of affection weaponized into identification. Judas walks up to Jesus and says, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kisses him. Jesus responds, "Do what you came for, friend." The word friend lands like a blade. The soldiers move in. The arrest happens. The disciples scatter. Then the reality hits. By morning, Jesus is condemned, beaten, and sentenced to crucifixion. Judas sees what he's set in motion and is seized with remorse. He returns to the chief priests and elders, trying to give the money back. "I have sinned," he says, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." Their response is brutal in its indifference. "What is that to us? That's your responsibility." They don't care about his guilt. They got what they wanted. Judas throws the coins into the temple, walks out, and hangs himself. The chief priests pick up the silver, but won't put it back in the treasury because it's blood money. Instead, they buy a potter's field to bury foreigners. It becomes known as the Field of Blood, Akeldama in Aramaic, a monument to the transaction. Matthew and Acts give slightly different details about Judas's death, but both emphasize the same trajectory: regret without redemption, remorse without repentance. Judas recognizes his guilt, but doesn't seek forgiveness. He returns the money, but not to the right person. He confesses to men who don't care, rather than to the God who might. The 30 pieces of silver buy nothing but a graveyard, and a name that echoes through history, a shorthand for betrayal. The kiss was a signal. The suicide was a verdict, and the field remains, purchased with the price of a life that chose despair over grace. Judas had access to mercy right up until the rope. He never asked for it. Let's talk about offering envelopes. The early church smells like bread, sweat, and supernatural honesty. Ananias and Sapphira stage a donation with creative math and discover that the Spirit reads the ledger. They fall one after the other, and great fear spreads like incense. Transparency memo received. The context matters here. The early church in Jerusalem is operating on a voluntary communal system. People are selling property and land, bringing the proceeds to the apostles, and the money is being distributed to anyone in need. It's working beautifully. Barnabas, for instance, sells a field and lays the full amount at the apostles' feet. No fanfare, no conditions, just generosity. The community is thriving on radical trust and shared resources. Then Ananias and Sapphira decide they want the reputation without the sacrifice. They sell a piece of property. So far, so good. But instead of bringing the full amount or simply keeping it, both of which would be completely fine, they conspire together to bring part of the money while pretending it's the whole sale price. They want to look like Barnabas-level donors while keeping a safety net. It's not the withholding that's the problem. It's the performance. They're lying to the community and, by extension, lying to God for the sake of appearing more generous than they actually are. Ananias arrives first and presents the money to Peter. Peter doesn't ask how much the land sold for. He already knows. "Ananias," he says, "how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money? Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't the money yours to do with as you wished? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God." Ananias hears this, collapses, and dies on the spot. Young men come in, wrap up his body, and carry him out for burial. The room is silent. Fear settles in like fog. About 3 hours later, Sapphira shows up, unaware her husband is dead. Peter gives her a chance to come clean. "Tell me, is this the price you and Ananias got for the land?" She doubles down. "Yes," she says. "That is the price." Peter responds, "How could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also." She drops dead immediately. The same young men carry her out and bury her beside Ananias. Great fear seizes the whole church and everyone who hears about it. The lesson is stark and unambiguous. God values integrity over image. The sin wasn't keeping money. It was the coordinated deception, the attempt to manipulate perception within a community built on trust. The judgment is severe, immediate, and public. It establishes a precedent in the early church. Honesty matters, pretense is dangerous, and the Holy Spirit isn't fooled by creative accounting. The ledger stays clean. You're on Cyprus, hearing Paul preach while Elymas interrupts like that one guy on every conference call. The apostolic stare is firm. The sentence is measured. A season of darkness, so he must be led by the hand. It's not cruel. It's corrective. The proconsul believes. The rest of us make a note. Don't spam the gospel. The scene unfolds during Paul and Barnabas's first missionary journey. They've landed on Cyprus and eventually make their way to Paphos, where they meet Sergius Paulus, the Roman proconsul. The text describes him as an intelligent man who's genuinely curious about the message Paul is bringing. He summons the two missionaries because he wants to hear the word of God. This is a golden opportunity. A high-ranking Roman official, open-minded, asking questions. But there's a problem in the room. Elymas, also called Bar-Jesus, is a Jewish sorcerer and false prophet who's embedded himself in the proconsul's inner circle. He's likely a court advisor, someone Sergius Paulus trusts for spiritual counsel or supernatural insight. When Elymas realizes Paul and Barnabas are gaining traction, he actively opposes them. He's not asking clarifying questions or raising theological objections. He's running interference, trying to turn the proconsul away from the faith. His motives aren't hard to guess. If Sergius Paulus converts, Elymas loses influence, income, and access. So he interrupts, contradicts, and obstructs. Paul, filled with the Holy Spirit, locks eyes on him. What follows is not a casual rebuke. Paul calls him son of the devil, an enemy of all righteousness, accusing him of perverting the right ways of the Lord. Then comes the sentence, "Now the hand of the Lord is against you. You are going to be blind for a time, not even able to see the light of the sun." Immediately, Elymas is enveloped in darkness. He stumbles around, groping for someone to lead him by the hand. The room goes silent. The proconsul watches this unfold in real time. A man who was just loudly opposing the message is now fumbling in the dark, powerless, dependent. Sergius Paulus believes on the spot, astonished by the teaching and the display of divine authority. The text doesn't say Elymas repents or what happens to him after his sight returns, but the blindness is explicitly temporary. A corrective measure, not a permanent curse. It's a forced timeout, a tangible consequence designed to stop the interference and make a point. This isn't Paul losing his temper or lashing out in frustration. It's a calculated apostolic intervention in a high-stakes moment. Elymas wasn't just disagreeing. He was actively working to prevent someone from hearing the gospel. The blindness serves as both judgment and object lesson. It removes the obstacle, demonstrates God's power, and gives Elymas a visceral experience of the spiritual darkness he was promoting. The proconsul converts, the mission continues, and Elymas gets a preview of what it's like to obstruct divine communication. The message lands. Don't block the signal.